In this video, we'll be continuing with the C# video tutorials. So in this video, we'll be going over the labs for value types and reference types. So I've spent a long time. So something happened because I have like 300 videos to upload. Tried to make some space by deleting Visual Studio because that's like a bulky app. So I tried to delete it. And then Rider stopped working, so I guess there was something connected in there to make the Windows Forms app run. I'm getting this error right now. Never mind. But basically, we're just going to be doing this without running it. I never really run the apps anyways, but for now we'll just be doing a little bit of notes. I'll try to fix it tonight. So I spent like 3 hours trying to fix it, almost 3 hours. Nothing happened. I deleted it. I finally reinstalled Visual Studio, I'm probably just going to delete Rider again for the second time and try to import the settings in. So that could take another while, so I'll just do this for now. So value types and reference types, we've gone over these in the notes. So when you declare a value type variable, the compiler sets aside or allocates a chunk of memory that is big enough for that variable. So we've done this in the notes, but for example, these are value types, so int, for example, whole number. Also, this is a different version of Rider. It's like 2023. Before it was like 2022, some version of that. So there's an update. Looks like it's italicizing the comments already. That seems to be a change. Which doesn't really matter, that's fine. So here we'll have, for example, double. We could have real number here. Here we could have a decimal currency number. So we have a bunch of different value types. So just remember these are value types. Excuse me. So we have pretty much memory allocated for whole number is going to be 4 bytes, for real number is going to be 8 bytes, and for currency number is going to be 16 bytes. So then we could then initialize these, obviously. So we could say whole number points to 99. Then we could say real number points to whatever, some value. We could say currency number points to some other value. Remember to tag on, so for example we could say 800 or 700 dot 0. Don't forget to tag on the M for the decimal numbers. Okay, so what happens, so when you're working with a value type, you are using a variable that holds a piece of data. So this is different from the way that reference types or object reference types work. When you're working with a reference type, you're using two things. So you're using an object that is created in memory and a variable that references the object. So that's different than value types. So basically object reference types. So it's an object that is created in memory and a variable that references the object. So it's different than value types. So value types just reference a piece of data in memory. For an object type, it has to create an object type in memory as well. It's a little bit confusing. You don't really have to worry about the theories too much when you're coding. You just have to focus on the code. You don't really have to worry about the theories too much. Theories are just for testing, so they'll get tested on it in university or whatever. So we've already gone over this stuff in the notes. So I'll just stick with code stuff only. So we've created an object from the random class, so we've gone over this in the notes, but once again that's just like, for example, random points to new random. So this is creating a new random object of the random class. You have to use a new keyword. It's exactly like Java. This is C#, so it's the same thing. Exactly 100% the same thing. Okay, so we'll move on to arrays now. So that's just a little refreshment on value types and reference types. So arrays we've done. So we've talked about basically how a variable can only hold one piece of data in the notes. So arrays are used to store multiple pieces of data. For example, in one, pretty much, it stores an array of data in one variable, pretty much. So it helps you you could have indexes to access the elements. You have to instantiate an array object. So let's just see if there's any more code examples here. So for example, like we've already done this in the notes, but we could instantiate an array like this. Int array points a new int. For example, it has 10 elements. Therefore, we could say array of index 0 points to like 1. Array of index 2 points to 2. Sorry, array of index 1 points to 2. Array of index 2 points to 3. We could go on till. So remember, 10 elements will be index 0 to n minus 1. So 10 elements will be 0 to 9. Right, so that will go from index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you can store numbers 1 to 10 if you're keeping the same pattern of values. Okay, so obviously you could hold ints in an array, strings, doubles, decimals, whatever type. You can create your own type. We'll do that later on. You could, instead of writing 10 here, you can create a constant int or something. You could go, you could say constant int size points to like 10. Then here you could pass in size. So you could say int array points to new int array of array index size. So you could do that. So remember, arrays have indexes, or they may be called subscripts in C#. I just call them index. So index should be fine. So a subscript 0 is the same thing as index 0, which points to the value 1 in this case. Okay, so array element default values. May have not gone over this part. So when you instantiate an array that's of type int, actually this should be common knowledge, because when you instantiate an int, we've discussed that if you just declare it, its value is going to be 0. So array element default values. When you create a numeric array in C, its elements are set to 0 by default. So I guess if you instantiate a size here of 10 elements, the rest array, see how we have an we'll set the values of array index 3 and higher. So 3 and higher to 10 to 9 would be set to 0 because we haven't touched them. If you just declare an object reference variable that's not pointing to a full array object, like you haven't instantiated the whole object, the value might be null. So just be careful with that. You can always double check in the debugger, which is currently not working for me, so I'll set that up later on. Okay, so there's a little bit on null here, which we haven't really discussed null too much. Okay, so remember, you can create an array to hold any type of value. It is possible to create an array of reference type objects. If you create an array of reference type objects, each element of the array acts as a reference variable. By default, the elements of an array of reference type objects are set to the special value null. That's what I was just pretty much saying, explaining. So by default, the elements of the array of reference type objects are set to the special value null. So null, I believe, in C# is just null, like that. In C+, in C, I think it's null, like that. In Java, I think it's capital in Java. So just be careful. Sometimes it's capital or lowercase, depending on your language. So let's just write something here for this because we haven't gone over null. So the value null indicates that a reference variable is not set to a valid object and cannot be used for any meaningful purpose. So that's just means that it doesn't point to an object. So if it points to null, from what I learned, is that it's basically just saying, so here it says it's not set to a valid object. That just means it doesn't point to an object. So null does not, so null means that it does not point to an object. That's the way I remembered it. That's the C# definition, so it's similar. Okay, so we can use null. I think what they're getting at is that, so if we go like, for example, int array like that, we just have an object reference variable, like an array object reference variable. It doesn't have the part where it goes points to new int of, for example, 10 or 100 elements. Right, so then now if we have that full array instantiation, the object reference variable points to the new int array of 100 elements. If we just so all of these should be 0, I believe. All values are initialized to 0. Now if we just had half of this int array, then I believe any values would be set to null. I believe. You can always check that. But that's just, I believe that's what these docs are saying. Okay, so we've done this in the notes already, working with array elements. You can access the individual elements in an array using their subscripts or indexes, so we've already done that. That's exactly what we just did here. I just highlighted it. Okay. So we could basically we could have another array here. So we could instantiate another array below here. So we could say constant int, we could say size points to 3. We could say that we want an array of the decimal type, so decimal array. We could say vals points to new decimal array of, for example, size. We could pass in size to instantiate this array size. So here we could say vals of array index 0 points to, here we could say decimal dot parse. We could pass in vals we could pretend we have some text boxes here. So we could say that we have vals1 text box dot text. We could say then vals of array index 1 points to decimal dot parse. So this assumes that we have these text boxes set up. We could say vals2 text box dot text. And here we could say vals of array index 2 points to decimal dot parse, passing in vals of array, passing in as a parameter vals3 text box dot text. So what's happening here? So we're storing this value in the array index, for example 0. So vals of array index 0 is going to point to the decimal dot parse method, which, remember, it passes the string as a decimal. So in this case, the string is vals1 text box dot text. So we're assuming we have a text box under GUI where you can enter text, or the user can enter text, and it's going to take that data and convert it from a string type to a number type, in this case a decimal type, right? Then it's going to store it in that index. So we'll be getting into a lab with that coming up. Kind of wanted to make sure that it worked, but I don't think this is a full example. So we have an event handler here. So let's just basically so this is going to be the elements, so the display elements apps form. So I kind of wanted to set this up. Basically we'd have let's just try to see what we can do here. So because I didn't really want to open up Visual Studio, it's too slow compared to Rider. I think we can make the form and just get the logic down here, so let's just go with that. I'd never run the apps anyways. I like hardly run them unless it's important, really important for you guys to see. So let's just, product refs are missing, so hopefully this would load at some point. I'm not sure if actually the design window is going to work. Do you need it to? I think it might actually not work, so we might just have to just do some logic here, and I'll have to fix that. Okay, so I don't think the design window is going to load without I'm getting an error here that's saying that it's missing these tasks. Something's glitching out with Rider. I tried to install it. It's not working properly. It's because when I use it on my laptop, it's showing .NET versions of like 4.0 all the way up to like 8. But here it's only showing it up to 3.5, and when I try 3.5, it's saying it's not working. I believe that there's a glitch somewhere. It's missing some version of .NET that I think I imported with Visual Studio when I first set up Rider. Anyway, so let's just go back to the code, at least some code comments, or we could just do it in here and not run it. But basically, pretend we have a form with basically just a label that says enter 3 names at the top. Below it we'll have 3 text boxes in a row, so right beside each other like this. So let me just draw this up. So we have enter 3 names, so it's then, or enter 3 strings, whatever. Then here beside each other we'll have like, this is a text box. Let's say a text box is this, like this, 1 text box, 2 text box, and then 3 text boxes in a row. Then we could say we're going to have a button here that says get strings. Let's pretend this is a button. That's it. That's all we need to, all we really need here. So we have, this is our form. It's going to come up as the pop-up window on the PC. So it says enter 3 strings. We're going to have 1 text box here, 1 text box here, and 1 text box here. And then there's a button, get strings. So when you click the button, it's going to save the strings, I assume, to an array. Let's see what actually happens in the logic. So we have a get names button, so we know how to do that. Okay, so this is going to actually pretty much just be set up. So let me just go back to my notes here. Let me just pull that up for you guys. Okay, so let's say that we have the button set up in the design window at this spot. Like we have the button set up. Let me delete this now, this stuff here. let's say that we have, this is a form here. Imagine this. Oh, why is it doing that? I was trying to do like just an underscore, but it looks like it's not putting the underscores completely beside each other. Enter 3 strings. Let's pretend that's like the form border. Like the actual window. So it looks like that. Imagine we had something coming down like there, at least. Could we? No, I don't think we can. Actually, we could. Let's see. Or something's glitching out. Oh, okay. Okay, right there. Okay, so that's our form. We'll pretend we could have it like this as well. You can imagine this label is centered. So this is a label here, pretend that's a label. These are text boxes, 3 text boxes, and this is a button. Okay, so we have 1 button, 1 label, and 3 text boxes. So now, let's pretend we had the text box. So let's pretend we had this laid out in the design window. But instead of that, we could actually just create the identifiers or the object reference variables here. So we have let me just go back here for a sec. So we have a text box. So name 1 text box. No, sorry. Text box. Name 1 text box. Text box name 1 text box points or several object reference variable here. Sorry. Private text box. Name 2 text box. Private text box. Name 3 text box. Okay, we have 3 text boxes. What else? We need a button and a label. Well, we don't need to access the label, so let's have the button. So here we'll have a get names. We'll have private text box. Sorry, not text box. Private button. Get names button. Object reference variables. 4 object reference variables. Now here I don't think that's working. Is it? Yeah, because this thing's not working properly. Using systems.threading.task is missing. Something's wrong with it. It's glitching out. I'll have to try to fix it again later. Okay, so in the constructor then we'll say, in the constructor we'll add, basically we don't really need to set the name, well, I guess we could. Oh, we don't really need to. We could say name, text, font. We could do that. Location, border style, add the control. We don't really need to do that. We could set the name here, so we could say, let's just set the name. So name 1 text box dot name points to name 1 text box, just to assert the identifier as a string. So remember to add that as a string. So name 2 text box dot name points to a string, then name 2 text box, semicolon. Then here name 3 text box dot name points to name 3 text box as a string. We can go for the button here. Get names button dot name points to get names button. We'll do a full lab later on with the layouts and all that. Font we've done. Location we've done. It's not gonna, the location isn't gonna look perfect unless we set up using pretty much a layout, which we'll have to instantiate a bunch of rows and columns, which we don't really need to do that. we're just going for the logic here of arrays. Okay, so we just have, that's all we really need. Text box we can skip. So actually there's one more thing, sorry. The button event handler. So here we'll say, and the constructor will say get names button plus equals new, so new event handler. Then here we'll pass in get, we'll name it here, so get, sorry, the first one should be get names button dot click, because we want to handle a click event. So then here we'll say then plus equals new event handler. Then here in the parameters we'll pass the name. So we'll say get names button underscore click. Then it's going to wonder what that is. So when it wonders what it is, you just have to go down here. And then here we'll say private void get names button underscore click. Takes parameter object sender comma event args e. Now we'll go back to the so that's just setting up the form. So that's pretend everything's set up now. It looks like this, minus us doing the layout, which we'll do in another tutorial. So you can just pretend that let's pretend we dragged and dropped everything. It looks like that. Then we access everything. We access this code here by just accessing the names, which we asserted the identifier name here. Then we set up the click event handler. Then now we've written the event handler definition. So now here we can say we have a constant int size set to 3, similar to what we were doing before. So then we can have here, we could say that we have a string array. We could say string array names points to new string array passing in size. Then we could say names of array index 0 points to name 1 text box dot text. So now we're filling this array with the data from the text box. So let's say we entered something in the text box, or the user entered something in the text box right there. That's going to be names text box 1. This one's named text box 2. And that one's named text box 3. Now here we're saying, okay, we have an array, a local array. We're saying that we want to take names of array index 0, so now we're accessing the array we just instantiated. And we're pointing it to name 1 text box dot text. So pretend we entered some data here, like that, and it was accepting data. So we entered like a string here. Now the array of array index 0 is going to point to the data that we entered, because we're accessing name 1 text box dot the text property. This is a string, so now it's going to store the data in the string array because it's the same type. We can do that for the rest of them, so we can say names of array index 1 points to name 2 text box dot text. The names of array index 3 points to name 3 text box dot text. So now we have the data from the 3 text boxes being passed to index 0, 1, and 2. So index 0 of names, so the index 0 of the names array points to name text box dot text, name 1 text box dot text. The names array index 1 points to name 2 text box dot text, and the names of array index 2 points to the name 3 text box dot text. So now the array has been populated with the data. Now we can display the names, for example, through a message box. So we could say message box.show names of array index 0. Here we could say message box.show names of array index 1. Then here we could say message box.show names of array index 2. Here we could say message box.show names of array index 2. So now we're just basically what's going to happen is just 3 pop-ups boxes are going to pop up, and it's going to first one is going to show the first name. So this form's going to pop like when you run the app, this form is going to pop up on the screen. Then the message box is going to show a message box, like a pop-up window is going to come up and show the names of array index 0, which is, for example, let's just say we have like some kind of name str1, then here str2 or string 2, and then the third one is str3, so string 3. So the message box 1 pops up, message box, so the message box, the first message box is going to pop up and say str1. Then you're going to click OK. Then when you click OK, the next one's going to pop up. So a pop-up window is going to pop up. It's going to say str2. You can click OK. If you leave it, it's not going to change to message box 3. It's just going to sit there forever and do nothing. Then here you'll say, it'll pop up and say message box. It'll say str3 in the third pop-up window. When you click OK, the code ends. Nothing else happens. So basically just 3 pop-up windows are going to pop up on your screen, starting at the first one. Until you click the OK on the first one, it's not going to go to the second one. So an array so just a description now. Again, an array to hold 3 strings is created. The names you entered into the text box, so pretend we ran it and we entered strings into the text box. That's going to get assigned to the array elements. Each element of the array is displayed in a message box. So this is the display element app. We could have saved it as display element app. So that's the name. So basically it just displays the contents of a string array. Because the array's elements are strings, we can pass each element directly to the message box.show method without performing a data type conversion. If you want to pass a numeric array element to the message box.show method, however, you'll have to call the elements toString method. So we could change this here. So we could have, let's just have some other code down here. So we can say that we have a constant int size points to 3 again. So same thing, same size. We could just access that. Or we could say constant int new size. So new size points to 4 in this case. We could say here int array vals points a new int, passing in new size as the size. Then here we could say vals of array index 0 points to like some value. Here we could say vals of array index 1 points to some value. Here we could say vals of array index 2 points to some value. Okay, so we have 3 values. Now we can display the array elements. So again, we could go message box.show. We could say here that we want to show vals of array index 0.toString, because remember, why are we doing this toString? We're doing the toString because messagebox.show, the method can only take strings as a parameter. So you can't pass it a number, it's going to get an error or an exception. So here we have to say vals of array index 0.toString. So we just call the method on the end of the array box like that. Now it's going to show this value. Before we were showing this value, we could just say we want to show names of array index 0 because it was a string, so it would print to the message box. It would display the message box to the user because it takes a string type. In this case, it's a number array of type int, so that we can't just pass the string to it. It's going to cause an exception. The program will crash. It's going to say the types aren't the same. I'm trying to pass an int to a string method, it's not working. So here in this case, you have to call the .toString method on the end of it to cast it from an int to a string. So here we'll say messagebox.show vals of array index 1 .toString. Then here messagebox.show pass in vals of array index 2 .toString. Done. Then it's going to show you message box. The same thing's going to happen. In this case, it's not going to print out names. Message box, so when you run the app, the message box will pop up, a pop-up window will pop up, it'll say 12. Then you hit OK. Another one will pop up, 15. If you don't hit OK, it's just going to stay at 15 forever. And if you click OK, then 17 will pop up. It'll hit OK, and it's done. So I'll probably just end it there for this tutorial. So in the next video we'll be going over another lab. So this was a small lab. I'll try to get the run working, and I'll try to get at least this display, the drag and drop working again. In the next video we'll be going over array initialization. So that's what it's called in C#, to initialize an array, not like this, but with the curly brackets. So if you guys like the video, you can like and subscribe to support the channel for more programming and investing tutorials. In the next video we'll be going over array initialization. So we'll be doing some notes on there, a few more code examples, the length property, then we'll be doing a lab. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys like the video, you can like and subscribe to support the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.